it leaks out of your body. If you're lucky. I can't imagine holding on to that kind of anger and railing against the injustice. I can't believe it lasted for 2-3 years. I can't imagine it having lasted longer.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan. Welcome back to the new season. It took a little bit longer than expected. Who knew moving houses would take so long? But I also wanted to have amazing guests locked up before we started this season, and today's guest is no exception. So today's chat is simply mind-blowing and a real treat. Paget is brilliant, she's fun, wise, incredibly insightful, and uplifting. I took a lot out of this chat, in particular around Paget's forward-moving mindset and willingness to grow and learn. Also, before we get into this episode, the full video will be on my new YouTube page under Michael Kahan. I've just started it, so if you could click that subscribe button and like button, that would really help the podcast grow. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm not really sure where to start because the list of credits is gigantic, but we'll give it a go anyway. So today's guest, Paget Brewster, is an actor who starred as Special Agent Emily Prentiss in Criminal Minds. She's also starred in Another Period opposite John Stamos in Grandfathered, and also played Frankie on Community. In addition to starring in 2 Emmy Award-winning series, HUFF and Andy Richter Controls the Universe, she's also been in Friends, 2.5 Men, Law & Order SVU, Key and Peele, Modern Family, and has also voiced the roles of various characters on Family Guy, American Dad, BOJACK HORSEMAN, HARVEY BIRDMAN and Bird GIRL, and was also nominated for an Emmy for her voice work in DUCKTALES. Her voice will next be heard on the Netflix series Captain Fall. Among her feature film credits are Welcome to Happiness, My Big Fat Independent Movie, The Specials, Big Bad Swim, The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, Desperate But Not Serious, and Man of the House. Paget will next be seen in How I Met Your Father on Hulu. She was recently seen in Ryan Murphy's Netflix series Hollywood and in a recurring role on the CBS comedy Mum. So as you can imagine, we cover a lot in this chat, such as hosting a talk show, social media, road rage and anger, self-awareness, bartending, panic attacks, criminal minds, letting go and moving forward, being in a band, fortitude, and show killing. Before we get into this epic chat, if you'd like to keep up to date with the latest info regarding the podcast, follow Funny in Failure on Instagram and Facebook. I often post short clips and other cool stuff to keep you in the loop for upcoming and previous episodes. Also, if you'd like to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram and Twitter under Michael_Kahan. That's Kahan with a K. And lastly, the podcast comes out every week, 5 p.m. Mondays, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other terrific episodes. I hope you enjoy. Okay, I have like 5 places I want to start, but maybe we can start here. I found this really fascinating. I want to know about your Instagram page. You have like that finger pointing. It's 2 words, 1 finger. Tell me how that started and I guess what that means to you.
So you know how everybody is on social media, and it frightens me a little bit. I was on Twitter. Everyone said, Twitter, you need to be on Instagram. And I thought, I just don't want to advertise product. So I decided my Instagram account would be 2 words, 1 finger, and that I would limit myself to only I would take a picture of my finger pointing at something, and then I'm allowed 2 words to describe it. Mm-hmm. And it was just so that it wouldn't become, write a long diatribe answer to this or put up videos, or I can't do it. I utilize social media, but I've also definitely posted dumb things when I was drinking or responded to someone who was really hurting my feelings and that's what they wanted and that's stupid. So I decided to limit myself with my Instagram account.
That makes perfect sense. And everyone in the world has a love-hate relationship. And I know that in your industry, sometimes, well, it seems quite a lot of the time social media is important. have you had to like change your relationship in the sense of how you see it? Because sometimes it can be a business, so it can actually help you get a job for some reason. Does that bother you, that side?
Does it bother me? I guess what bothers me about social media is I feel, first of all, jobs now require in language in a contract when you sign for a show or narration on a crime podcast, or that you have to post about the show that you've been hired to do. So it's selling. It's a selling tool. And it can also be a way to reach out to fans and friends and support your friends. And it's a double-edged sword, because it can be hurtful. People can attack you who you don't know. You don't know these people. And so I'm wary of it, but I also respect the power that it inherently has. And I do want to be able to reach out to people, audiences of things. And I don't want to just market. So I love it and I hate it in the sense that it's a tool and it can be used for good or evil. Yeah. And I don't want to be evil. I want to help support my friends' podcasts. I want to advertise when I'm excited that, oh, I'm Bird Girl and it's on Adult Swim and HBO Max, and please watch this cartoon I'm in. But I don't want to just do that. And I also don't, when I have said I love Marie Callender's Chicken Pot Pie, I can't make it better, then they send gifts, and I don't want to do it for profit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't mind other people who do. I think it's great when people are able to make a living using the internet and they're not hurting anybody. But I personally don't want to promote products that I don't have anything to do with or get paid for posts, and I don't want to hire someone to answer for me. But I also have friends who do that, and I totally respect that. I personally don't want to do it. Do you have a relationship with social media that is sketchy or difficult or fraught?
No, I wouldn't say that I do, but I've seen guests and friends. Like I've got my one friend who, I won't say his name, and he's got a massive social media following, and he sees it as a game. He's extremely true to himself. He's very authentic, and he has strong boundaries with it, but he understands that it's also his livelihood. He's not being fake, and he has amazing relationship with his fans, and he has the craziest relationships with fans. Like people message him everything, like some extremely, I'm not gonna, just some of the worst things that you can imagine. Like they sexualize him, and he understands it's a game. It's very bizarre. Some people say hurtful things, but 99.9% of them are amazing. But that's his job and that's his kind of career as well. So he understands that you're going to get some fucked up components of it, but most of it is loving, and he's tried to create like boundaries and rules for himself so that he's kind of the one running the ship, if that's the right way of saying it, and not let others.
I think that's very difficult to do, and I profoundly admire your friend being able to do it and have boundaries and be truthful, and he's not putting on a fake persona. I think I have a problem with people posting aspirational Instagram, this idea that, I'm on a yacht, I'm on a jet, I'm in a bikini. I think that can be hurtful. I think that can be hurtful to people who can't be on a jet or a yacht. And so, but I understand why people are interested. I just think it's tricky. It's tricky. We're living in a tricky time.
I know that's a good way of saying it. It is kind of weird because for some reason on my For You page on Instagram, I do have sometimes like this is just a stereotype, the guy with huge muscles, like on a yacht, like follow your dreams. If I can do it, you can do it, which is a great message. But I'm also very skeptical because one, it's probably not his yacht. And two, you don't know like the story or what's behind it. And we often see like the pictures and we assume that everyone's always happy. And we've spoken about on this podcast before, the Instagram life of how it's not necessarily real life, and what you see is not necessarily what you get. And so that can also be a dangerous game, because I know a lot of people, when they're on Instagram, they're only seeing the best of life, and life's not always like, in fact, it's probably rarely like that. And so it can actually be quite hard for people mentally when they're aspiring to do great things or just be a better version of themselves, and they just see all the time on Instagram this potentially fake life. And I know that can be quite hard for some people to navigate. So kind of like your relationship where you're doing it for you and that you understand that there's a lot going on, but it sounds like you've also had to kind of redefine your relationship with social media as well, if I'm gathering that right.
Yeah. And I first of all, I think most adults know life isn't suitcases full of cash and a cute shaved cat and a private jet. Sorry, unlikely, Michael. My concern is young, very young, impressionable people seeing things like that and films like that and thinking, oh, that's all I have to do is be an influencer and I can live a fabulous life and everything will be great. And that's just not adulthood. No matter who you are, everyone has problems and failings and insecurities. And so that's why I wanted to give myself, and I started strong. When I started Instagram, I was on vacation in Italy, and that little finger was pointing to the canal and the Rialto Bridge. And then it slowly devolved into my everyday life, which is new sweatpants or Star Wars SpaghettiOs, like,
ooh,
just things that I'm excited about at the supermarket.
See, that's what I like. I like the authenticity. And you mentioned that, I briefly read, or I looked through your Instagram, and all the comments are amazing and they're all loving. But you mentioned that sometimes there are hurtful comments. How have you had to kind of navigate that? And also, as a side point, being in your industry, people can write reviews and people see you, so you're probably more likely to receive a negative comment as opposed to people in other industries. How have you kind of dealt with that side, just in your life and mentally?
Really, now I just try not to read it. And I also remember that if I have ever tweeted something disparaging about someone on Real Housewives, I did that when I wasn't happy with myself. And so I think some people, and you hear about trolling and you hear about people being insulting, and they're anonymous. So there are no consequences. They're not responsible for, I think some people are just trying to get attention. It's dopamine. I think a lot of social media is just people, if someone responds to me, it will feel good. My brain will release dopamine. So if I say something mean, maybe so-and-so will respond to me. And I remember just tweeting a couple of years ago that I loved Ricky Gervais's show Afterlife. And he responded to me saying, "Thank you, Paget." And I was jumping up and down, so excited. And I thought, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's this great feeling that someone you don't know, but you respect and adore and appreciate, he responded to me. It could have been his assistant. It could have been his nephew. I don't know. But to me, I felt heard and seen and responded to, and it was very exciting. So I understand that people who are saying negative things are not coming from the happiest, healthiest place, because I recognize that in myself. If I say something bitchy, it's because I feel bad about myself, and I am, well, I'm gonna put her down. Why is she taking bikini photos? That she's too skinny. Well, what's wrong with me? Clearly, I've gained a few pounds during the pandemic, and that's a bitchy thing to say. There's no point. I'm not trying to get anyone's attention, but I have recognized that I said the wrong thing on Twitter. I've done that and been called out for it, and then realized, well, what am I doing? What am I doing? And that's helped a lot. I just try not to read the mean stuff, because you don't feel good when you're saying mean stuff. It's coming from feeling bad. So
I love your perspective, and I wrote it down so I don't butcher it. You said that you recognize it in self, and we've spoken
yeah,
about it. I've not coined the term, but I just say this, that sometimes anger is a mirror. And so when we see, through my perspective, a negative aspect of someone, typically we're seeing a negative aspect within ourselves, and that's why we're recognizing it. Is that what you mean by you recognize in self when you see those, like, not negative comments, but you see perhaps the negative aspect? Is that what you're alluding to?
I am aware that, yeah, if something provokes me towards being judgy or dismissive with a friend or another person or a stranger or someone on a TV show that I watch, and if I tweet something negative, it's because I'm responding to something in me that is upset or hurt or angry or jealous or needy. And so, yeah, I think that happens. I think and we're human. We're the most faulty species on the planet. So we all know what that feels like. We all know what it is to respond in anger or insecurity
Definitely.
to things. And there's a reason why we feel ashamed and embarrassed about it, because our better selves, we know, oh, that wasn't smart or thoughtful or accepting or kind or self-aware. So I do think you and I are saying the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, I think this is literally the cure to, like, saving the planet, is self-awareness, but also to recognize the fault. And everyone, as you said, everyone's got faults. It's not a judgment of anyone. To recognize the faults when we see in other people, that is game changing. But we can't always do that, especially in the moment. Like when something's heated or we perceive someone is doing something bad or wrong, we can lash out. But by what you're saying is that you're recognizing an aspect within yourself, which we all have. And I think that's amazing. I want to know, how the hell have you figured this out? Because that is a game-changing, what's the word, like life-changing experience when we can recognize what's actually going on, because it means that we're not as triggered. You don't get as triggered when you recognize. You look very confused. Do you want me to rephrase this?
I don't feel like I'm trying to, how did I figured it out. I figured it out by failing as a human. So
Yeah.
you're the perfect person to talk to. I have had to figure, I think my family is very, we're quick to anger sometimes. And it's something I've definitely been working on since I was 25 or 26 or something. It's something I've had to be aware of. And that's why I love acting angry characters. It's great. It's a huge release. It's steam
Nice.
coming out of the top of the kettle. I think I first started actively being aware of road rage. Driving in Los Angeles, if someone cut me off, or feeling road rage, I realized that has to stop. I understand it's because I'm not seeing this person's face. I have no empathy. I'm being defensive and selfish and individualistic by thinking, how dare you try to get into my part of the road, which is just bad. So I decided every time someone did something that would upset me road rage wise, I just pretend my mom is driving that car and she's new to town, and I wouldn't want anyone to give my mom the finger or scream, you're such a fucking hero. You know, I don't want to respond that way. And realizing that I think we should all be more empathetic and not rush to judge people and not argue our points, listen more, is in part from having said things on Twitter that I regret, and being part of a dialogue that I then think, what's the point in that? What have I done? Being negative or judgmental or calling someone out I don't even know. Why did I do it? I don't like when people do it to me. They don't know me, and but I failed. I did that. And I regret it. And so it's not easy being self-aware and trying to be a better person, because sometimes we're just greedy little jerks. Sometimes the human condition is, oh, why won't they open it? Why won't they get another cashier in here? Why am I? That's part of what we are. But I guess maybe being older, maybe being wiser. I'm just trying to be better.
That is awesome. But you also mentioned at the age of like 25, 26, that's really young, and age doesn't mean that much in the sense of wanting to improve and be better. That can be really hard. Like you're experiencing, for example, road rage, for example, that can be all consuming and can take over. But to kind of put your hand up and want to be better, that's hard. You don't see that too much in this day and age. And that's not a pessimistic outlook, because some people lack self-awareness, but it sounds like you put your hand up and like, I want to be better. And especially at a young age, I find that remarkable. Was it just, you decided that you didn't want to live a certain way, or like?
Well, I got into therapy at a certain point. I feel like it would be very strange for me to say, yes, Michael, I'm remarkable. Thank you for noticing how remarkable
you are. Remarkable, and it is remarkable.
I don't think so. I think most people are good. Most
Agreed.
people are trying very hard to be better and be thoughtful and caring. The meanest are the loudest, and the most pissed off and judgmental are the loudest people. But I still think it's a minority. I think it's a tiny group.
Agreed.
What are the statistics on Twitter that 90% of the tweets are written by 10% of the population? Some crazy number that all of this vitriol and political polarization and people.
That's why I'm off Twitter.
Yeah, it's just, but it's a very small group of people who are the loudest and most vocal and most condemning.
Yes. But also just from what you were saying before, I agree that most people are good. And I think we're actually all inherently good. And I know that might be controversial, but it's still hard to look at yourself, especially when we're feeling negative emotions. And yes, most people are trying to be better, but to actually first acknowledge that there's perhaps something not right within ourselves, or maybe that's not the right way of saying it, putting your hand up and saying, I want to be better. I want to see a therapist, because I know that especially at a young age, and maybe this is a male thing, it can be hard to like admit that you're not perfect, especially at younger ages when with like group of people, it's hard to put your hand, can be inverted commas, hard to say I'm not okay or things aren't great, because there is that like ego side and there's pride and there's all of these other emotions, but you did it and you're continuously keeping yourself accountable. And I think that's crucial. I think that's the best thing that every human can do. Doesn't mean we're all perfect, doesn't mean we're not going to stuff up, but if we're going to keep ourselves accountable and try to be better and admit when we've done something wrong, then to me, you're living the best life that you can.
Do you feel that in the last decade, it's gotten easier because I can't know what it's like to be a young man, and I just don't know what that experience is like. Do you feel as though within the last few years, men have been given permission to admit when they need help or mental health help or support? Okay, yes. It seems like that to me, but I can't speak to being a man in the world.
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me quite like that. I was kind of, not to pump up my tires, I've got a significant amount of work to do. I'm not perfect, just put that out there in case it's perceived. In my early 20s, I studied a field which is around emotional health. And so I was very, very, it's probably one of the best, it might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. And so I did, I studied with only females, pretty much. There was one other guy. So I was kind of lucky that I had that kind of perspective, because that changed how I saw things. But I know in my early 20s, it wasn't as spoken about as much. And it might just be a guy thing. It might just be my relationships at the time. But I think internally with the groups that I was in, and this is just my environment, I don't know about the whole world, I think it was quite hard for other people to necessarily express things. Still hard for some people, but I think there is definitely 100% more of a focus on men's health and how to communicate better. But there's a significant amount of work to be done. And I think that there's a lot of talk about it, but a lot of people don't really know what to do, through my perspective. They're trying, but they don't necessarily know what to do. It's amazing that there's a lot of talk of it's okay to not be okay and that type of stuff. But I think when I speak to some groups of people, they don't necessarily feel they have the tools. But when I speak to someone like you, which is extremely uplifting and empowering for me as well, you hear certain tools or just stories that help empower people. That's some of the feedback I've also gotten from this podcast as well.
Wow. Well, that what you've said is very flattering, and I appreciate it.
I actually want to go on another side, because this just sprung to mind. And you mentioned at the age of 25 or 26 that maybe this was the start of the journey in terms of looking after your emotional health. And I find this crazy story. I think this is the time where at what age did you get your first talk show?
Oh, yeah, that was 24, 25. I was in San Francisco. Let's see. Okay, so it was 1990. I was in San Francisco from 93 to 96. And in 94, 95, I had a talk show that was on the CBS affiliate at 1:30 in the morning, and it was called The Paget Show. And I would do man on the street interviews, and then it was 100-person audience, and
oh, wow.
Guests on a panel like Oprah, or then we had some producers for a while that wanted to make it like Jerry Springer, but I didn't want to get anybody to fight. And I don't even know if there are any shows like that on anymore, but talk shows were big. And in 1994, Ricki Lake was a huge TV show for Fox. And so every production company started signing anybody to do a talk show. There must have been 20 new talk shows the year my talk show was on in San Francisco. And that it was a great experience. We did 65 episodes. We aired at 1:30, and then our numbers were really good for the middle of the night. So they started airing them again at 1 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And I was still bartending. I had been a bartender for a long time. Since I graduated high school, I was bartending and waitressing. It was a great experience, but when the show didn't move forward, it was really a lot of, there were, 80 people who worked on the show were coming to me, and I was 25, and they were saying, you have to sell the show. You have to sell the show. You have to keep our show, keep our jobs. And that was really scary. And I started having panic attacks, and I had never had a panic attack before. So I had to start looking into, reading self-help books about what am I panicking about, and what am I responsible for? And I did. I tried to sell the show, but CBS bought Westinghouse, and then they had their own group of shows they wanted to promote, and I moved from San Francisco to Los Angeles and got an agent. So that was the end of the Paget show. But I guess I hadn't even put that together yet, that I had started having panic attacks because I felt responsible for people's jobs, and I couldn't sell the show. I couldn't get them to pick it up nationally, and I felt responsible for people's income. And that's when I started reading about, wow, I never put that together.
What insights did you get from that? Because that also, just as a side point, that's kind of like an unfair burden on you as well, that there's that much pressure, especially this was probably your first gig in the arena as well. And
oh yeah. Yeah, it was my first job, but I don't blame them. That's not, they were correct in saying, hey, please do everything you can to promote this show and sell this show and meet with other networks so that we can keep our jobs and keep this job in San Francisco. And that I didn't know how to handle that pressure.
Of course, yeah.
Is my problem, not theirs. And
Yep.
and I would want that same thing if I were in their position. And I did understand that. I didn't feel abused or taken advantage of or mistreated. I just felt such a pressure that I didn't know how to handle. That's when I started reading and trying to be more aware of my own mental health. So they did me a favor.
I really, I love your language, and you're right, it's not their fault, but still, like, there is a huge amount of pressure, especially of where you're at, and you've just kind of joined this thing and you're kind of the person on the show. But I like how you can see that they helped you. That's also somewhat of a rare trait, because you've seen something where there's forced you into a thing where you're having a negative experience in the panic attacks, but now you kind of see that as a good thing because it forced you to be more self-aware. I love that. I'm just nitpicking. I love that that positivity. What were kind of did you get more insights from, looking into yourself and your well-being at that stage? Were there things that that you needed to make shifts or positive shifts? Or was it just more?
Well, I think it started the I think it started a self-awareness. That was also, interestingly, I had a stalker when I was doing the pageant show.
Oh shit.
There ended up being two. And that was really, really scary. And so I started reading everything I could about how to protect myself and be more aware of my surroundings. And that led to years of reading everything, interviews and watching documentaries and reading books about every serial killer, arson, serial rape. And I think that years later is how I got my job on Criminal Minds. So even that helped. Not a fan of stalkers, but those two guys helped out in the long run. I know. So I feel like you discover this often in your podcast with guests, that they realize, oh, actually this felt terrible at the time, but wow, look at what it got me to here. And it's one of the reasons why I love what you do. So
thank you.
I've heard it from other guests speaking with you.
That means the world. And also for me, it's like, I seem to have such a small vocabulary, but it is very empowering and uplifting to hear that. And look, everyone has different experiences, and that's not to poo-poo on other people's negative experiences. But when you're talking about self-awareness and wanting to be a better human, that yes, we have negative experiences, and that's going to happen. But with a bit of time, and when you hear from someone like you and you realize, look, obviously we're not pro-stalkers. We don't want any of that whatsoever.
No, of course not.
But when you
you're not saying that. Yeah. I'm fairly certain you're not saying we are now pro-stalker.
I don't have a news article. But when you have like a negative experience, or even hearing like the panic attacks, for example, and I don't wish that on anyone, but to see how you can kind of see that as like I don't know if the right word's blessing, but a positive experience. And just in the acting realm, so many actors have been fired, for example. And I know that comes with a lot of like shame, embarrassment, and guilt and confusion and anger. But often when that's happened from this podcast, it's led into amazing opportunities and it's led to things that people wouldn't imagine possible. And I know that that's kind of happened with you, for example, and how that has led from an outside perspective into crazy amount of opportunities. So I'd love to know kind of your take on when you're going through something like that.
Yeah, I loved for you, the John DiMaggio's story and Chris Parnell's stories were really, it was great to hear that they felt the same way, being fired. And what happened was I had been on Criminal Minds playing Emily Prentiss for 6 years. And I think we're pretty sure Les Moonves and the people at CBS, they had made a a pilot inside an episode of Criminal Minds for a Criminal Minds spinoff with Forrest Whitaker and
That's how you
Bo
say his
Garrett
name.
and Michael Kelly, and it was a bunch of great people. They were great. They were inside an episode of Criminal Minds, and we flew to San Francisco, and the budget was really big, and it was a big director, and we were introducing these guys, and you know, they were meeting in a dojo behind a laundry, and they were super cool, and they wore a lot of leather, and our cast thought, oh, this is the first time CBS has paid attention to Criminal Minds since it started airing, and they wanted to fire me and another actress from the show. And it was, listen, nothing, I feel so bad at the time. And it felt bad for years. My agent did some fancy footwork, and I shot 17 episodes after technically I had been told I was gone. Ooh. I shot 17 episodes and then thought, I'm free. I'm done. And I loved everyone at Criminal Minds. I didn't have a problem with anyone there. I really had a problem with Les Moonves, and he no longer is the president of CBS, so I don't have a problem. I think I said actually pretty vocally at the time, I thought what he did was scummy, and that was before I knew other stuff, found out other stuff, because it was wrong. It was unfair, and it was wrong, and it was about money, but it was only women, and we made half what the men were made. Like, there was some ugliness. Like, really, are you saving that much money by getting new chicks? Okay. And AJ Cook was let go, and we both were really angry for a really long time. And I wish I had gotten over that personal feeling faster and earlier, but when something feels that unfair, and I know life isn't fair, and you should learn that as a child, life isn't fair.
Sometimes you never, it's a hard one.
Maybe, but I was enraged. And I remember I called John Cryer, who is a friend, and we had done a couple of shows together many, many years before. And I just said, I've been fired, and I'm furious. And he said, oh my God, I've been fired. I was furious. He said, I called Harvey Fierstein, the Hollywood, the Broadway actor with this voice. John Cryer was fired from Biloxi Blues, or he was fired from, he got fired as a young man, and it destroyed him. And he called Harvey, and he said, I'm going to tell you what Harvey told me. You're not an actor until you've been fired, and it wasn't your fault. Now you're an actor.
Oh, wow.
It was adorable, and he's right. And I like saying that to people when they call me and say, they just fired me, and I can't. Yeah, now you're an actor. Congratulations. Now you're real. No, you're not a real actor until you've been fired, because sometimes actors get fired because it's easier than finding a new showrunner or writing a new script or changing a couple of jokes. Actors get fired all the time. Mm. And that was some weird, and I shouldn't have taken it personally, but I did. And so that was a huge lesson. And I eventually rejoined the show when the same president was in his position at CBS. The same people were there who had said, okay, we'll let him go. We'll just get new chicks. The same people were there, but I rejoined because I wanted to.
I chose
to. I didn't have to, and yeah, it was on my terms. And I said, oh, also, you're going to give me a raise.
Oh, I love that.
Because none of us get raises. You're going to give me a raise, then I'll come back. And it was great to go back. And it was great to get over that anger. That was the war. I hated feeling that way. And I hope I handle getting fired, because if I continue to work, I'll be fired again. because it just happens. I'm not late. I'm always early. I know my lines. I'm not drunk. I know what I'm doing. I'll be fired for something I have no control over. I've been hired and I shouldn't have been. I'm not the right person for the part. That will happen. And I don't think I would get that angry again, because now I recognize, oh, that opened up a world of opportunity. I would never have done Grandfathered or Community or Another Period or DuckTales, or there were so many things that I had the opportunity to do because I was no longer on Criminal Minds. And I was fortunate enough to be able to come back. And in choosing to come back, that was a great move for me. And I love those people. And I always will, and will always be close. But I had to get over my anger. And I'm glad I did, because that stunk. It feels really bad being angry year after year. It's the worst.
I'm sure. There's two components. I've got 1,000 questions, so we'll see where this goes. But just saying that I'm just projecting how I would feel. Being fired obviously is not, especially when you feel that it's not fair and it's the wrong decision and it's outside of your control and it's for someone who's just, we can just say, being a silly head. I won't swear too much.
I love it.
But that, I'm not saying that you went through all this, but I'm just saying how I would feel. There's embarrassment as well, because it's public. And being fired, let's say in a corporate job, not that many people find out, for example. It's not like the whole world can see it. Then you're obviously feeling like angry and vengeful because this person's like wronged you and done something wrong, and not only wronged you, but wronged other people and perhaps other people you're not aware of. But to still kind of I'm just thinking about the coming back aspect. Like, I think that's really cool that you could kind of put some of that stuff to the side and do it for you. Not do it because of other things, but do it for you, because that's how you kind of regain and retake your power, especially when you've gone through something as potentially traumatic as that. Kudos to you. But also in that, going through an experience like that can really like crush confidence, for example. That can make you feel low. And we know it's not actually you, but to see the opportunities that came out of this, that's epic. You could kind of like...
You don't see it at the time, though.
Of course,
you don't see
never
it
do.
At the time. And you're right. And you're raising a really, really smart point, which is, it's not just, hey, that's unfair, I got fired. It's mortification. It's the fear that people think you did something really bad and they won't hire you. Oh. It's public, and there is a component of, oh, the fans are mad at me. They think I messed up, or they're mad at my friends that are still on the show that I've got. There's just weird blame circles, and it was something so outside of any of us. But there was genuine fear that people are going to think I did something wrong, and that I shouldn't be hired, and that I'm not trustworthy or competent or good at my job, or what do they think? What do they think happened? That they said, we no longer want you on this set. I mean, it hurt. It hurt a lot. Being able to come back years later, what had happened in the 4 years that I wasn't on the show, I got to do great work. I got to do great shows, and I wasn't damaged by having been let go. I don't know if that's because was there Twitter then? Was I being vocal? I don't know. I think I did interviews where I said I felt like it was supremely unfair that they let us go, and we didn't do anything wrong. So I did publicly defend myself, I guess. Maybe that helped. Maybe I just was I've been around for so long and I knew so many people. I mean, I knew most of the people that I worked with before I got Another Period or Grandfathered, Community. I knew those guys before I did that season for Yahoo. So I think people knew I wasn't a shady person. What happened when I came back was during the 4 years that I wasn't on Criminal Minds, Criminal Minds got a bigger audience because it was on Netflix. So more and more people were watching the show. And so more and more people were coming up to me in the supermarket or the airport saying, oh, I really miss you on the show. Why aren't you on the show? And I would just say, oh, you know, I was there for a long time and I'm on this show now. Maybe you'll like this show. And year after year after year of that, and every year CBS coming back to me and saying, will you come back to Criminal Minds? And I kept saying no, because I was too mad. At year 5, I thought, they keep coming up to people, women mostly, coming up and hugging me, saying, hey, can I get a hug? Oh, I wish you were on the show. Why aren't you on the show? And I had agreed to guest star, to just come and play that agent and run around with my friends and do a couple of episodes. And I came back to do that. And then Thomas Gibson was let go from the show. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. And while I was guest starring, the cast and the writers said to me, we now need to hire an actor to round out this team and play this part on this team. And you're here, and it makes sense that your character could come back from London and take this job. Would you do it? And I thought, after 4 years of lovely people hugging me and asking me why I wasn't back on Criminal Minds, I thought, why not? I'm going to see if they'll give me a raise.
I love
and
this.
And then yeah, I could do that. And I loved playing that part. I loved that show. I loved everyone on it. I loved the prop people and the grips and hair and makeup. I loved everybody. You know, so it was great to go back. But I had to choose it, and I had to fight them a little bit, because yeah, I like money and I like saving it. And, so
I've written like 20 points, and I like.
Oh no!
No.
Am I being unclear?
No. You're being so clear. I have extra points. I just want to like harp on, because this is an important point for me as well. Like, you chose it. It was on your terms. You went through something and you decided to kind of be the victor. And also, as a side point, that the firing in all areas of our life, and it wasn't your fault, but let's just say in someone else's perspective, let's just say we did do the wrong thing. It's not permanent. It's not going. I hear a story like that because in Hollywood, for example, I know perception and fear seems to be prevalent. And that kind of, you know this way better than me, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I know that people can kind of have the fear goggles on, of they perceive something, so they don't want to do it. But you kind of a brilliant example of how that's not necessarily the case, in that just because something didn't go to inverted commas the plan doesn't mean you can't still thrive. And you have thrived, and you thrived in that period, and you thrived then. But one of the points I wanted to discuss, I know that you've spoken about this. What made you finally decide to let go? Because anger is a strong emotion. We all go through it. And as you said, we carry it for a long time. But why actually let go and decide that it's no longer needed?
First, I have to agree with you that fear and perception are a very big part of, it's part of the conditioning of entertainment, is to make sure the actors and the writers are scared, keep them scared.
That's terrifying.
No, but I understand,
Yeah.
I get it. And if I ran a studio, I guess I'd be the same way. I don't know. They're just trying to, pay for their kids' school too. So I don't have kids. I don't know why I said two. Like, I understand where an executive is coming from by perpetuating fear. That does exist. It was just that passage of time and recognizing that I wasn't screwed. I wasn't dead. I wasn't going to go back to bartending. I had formed enough relationships and done enough work for enough people to know that I was trustworthy and someone they wanted to, play ball with. And that thing that only comes with time and reflection, that, oh, wow, I would never have been able to do this if I had stayed on that show the whole time. I would never have been able to work with these people and get to do this material, and it leaks out of your body. If you're lucky. I can't imagine holding on to that kind of anger and railing against the injustice. I can't believe it lasted for 2-3 years. I can't imagine it having lasted longer. And I think that's got to be a terrible way to live. I'm sure there are people who feel that way year after year after year. And I have to assume that must be cancerous, because it's a terrible way to feel.
I know that.
So I was very fortunate. I was very, very fortunate. And I also did, I worked for free. I did stage shows. I did podcasts or do a monologue for a live sketch show. I worked with my friends that were mostly from comedy, for free, just to keep working with people. And maybe that was proof that I was dependable. I don't know. I'd really have to analyze. I do know that the letting go of the anger was because I was fortunate enough to do things I never would have had the chance to do if I hadn't been let go. But that's hindsight. And relaxing and succeeding in the face of something that really hurt you. I didn't do the work. I don't even know if I was in therapy. I think it just ebbed. I think it just ebbed.
I think from knowing you and listening to you that the work is, first of all, the work's been done before in terms of like self-awareness and wanting to be better. And I think you are doing work throughout. It's just not labeled as work. You're still processing and doing your thing. But also I know that when I've gone through moments of anger or rage, that can kind of take away from the creative flow of things. And so you're putting your hand up and still doing a lot of creative endeavors. I think that's pretty cool as well, because you could just sit in your bum and be angry for a long time, which no judgment whatsoever, but you're still doing a lot of things. So I think that's also a way of how to like tackle it as well.
Maybe I was doing those things so I wouldn't be sitting on my bum feeling angry all the time, because it's a terrible way to feel. And I wish that on no one. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, that feeling.
Well, I will just make one comment, and I think that is doing work in that you are actively trying something. So kudos to you. I also, do we go here or here? I've got a billion questions, so we'll see how we go with the time. I want to go back to what you were saying at the very start when you're like 25 or 26 and you've got your own, what's it called? Daytime talk show. I want to just, how you got there is crazy. I know that we skimmed over this. I believe that you were in a band before and you'd broken up from the band, which we'll see if we can get there. But you don't just magically get a talk show. I know you said they're like 20, but there's a lot of people that want to like do this. And the story of you, I believe I'll just give a little bit of context and then we can get into it. You're bartending and then one of your clients is an agent or a manager and you beg him to kind of get you shown in the room. But just from where you were there to then just getting in the industry, and obviously you tried. Okay, I'm just rambling, but I want to know, how did you actually get?
I'll say it. I remember. Yeah. I don't know if you're reminding me or
no.
I'd tell the story to an audience.
No. I love it. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so all right. I was dating my drummer, and we lived together, and we had a band in New York for like 5 years, and then we broke up that band, and we moved to San Francisco, where he was from, and we started putting together another band. And then I was like, I don't want to do this. I was bartending. Then we broke up. And so the band was short-lived. We were democratic. We weren't very good. I had a great time, but I don't know if we were going to get anywhere with that band. The ex-boyfriend drummer is in a great band and makes furniture in the Pacific Northwest somewhere. He's incredible. So he's doing great. Don't worry about that guy. I was bartending at this place called the Slow Club, and which was just this sort of very attractive architectural San Francisco coffee house and bar. It was beautiful. It was designed by the owners, and it was very chic. And I made espressos and drinks. And one of the customers was a manager, and I paid for a couple of martinis and got him drunk and got him to agree that he would represent me for 3 auditions.
That's
I
amazing.
did not realize, this is in 1993, I did not realize that he only managed correspondents and hosts and that on-air talent. I thought a manager, it was only actors. I didn't know there were different, I wasn't concerned with other jobs. I just wanted to be an actor. So he set me up on 3 interviews. And I had also, at the same time, with other customers from Slow Club, been doing a public access sketch show called Strange America, where we were filming. I would borrow, these guys installed Sun Microsystems computers, and they were so rich. And they wanted to have a female join them on this show. And we were filming, I did stop motion Barbie doll film. I made botulism. We were doing sketches. We drove to Vegas dressed as aliens, like just a goofy comedy sketch show that was on public access San Francisco. So I had that tape of me on camera interviewing people and running around like an idiot. And my manager sent it to people. And because everybody was signing talk show hosts, I was offered a deal by Westinghouse called a step deal, which was, we will shoot a pilot for a talk show. And if we like it, we'll shoot another one. And if we like those 2, we'll shoot 10 episodes. So I shot a pilot, they liked it. And then they just picked us up to shoot for a year, and we shot, or not a year, whatever, 65 episodes. So we shot shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We shot 2 shows a day, sometimes 3 shows a day.
Wow.
And then, yeah. And the shows were about an hour long. And then I was bartending Saturday and Sunday nights because they weren't allowing me to, I won't say who, because I don't even know who. Someone wouldn't allow me to report my hours. They said, if you report how many hours you're working on this show,
Whoa.
we'll have to fire some of the producers. And I said, okay, then I won't report how many hours I'm working.
That's
so
crazy.
I made, I want to say 250 bucks. I mean, it was not host money.
No, especially when you're doing that many hours.
So I was still bartending on the weekends.
That's crazy.
And then doing a talk show that was airing at 1:30 in the morning. And it was a great experience. But then, as I said earlier, I couldn't sell it. And so I moved to Los Angeles. I had signed with an agent and told my agent I wanted to act. And he said, okay. And I moved to Los Angeles, and he was sending me on acting auditions, even though I had gone to acting schools.
Hadn't or had?
I had gone to classes, but I hadn't, I didn't go to Juilliard. I didn't go to NY. I didn't graduate college. I dropped out of Parsons School of Design. I didn't even finish foundation year. I was bartending and doing a play. So I really had there was no reason to think I should have gotten any acting jobs at all, because all I had was a talk show as a talk show host in some pretty terrible clothing. And I had I cut my own hair. I had a flat top, like a short, dark hair. But I had fun. It was really fun. And bartending is a great primer for having a talk show or interviewing, because when you're bartending, you're interviewing people. But what I found was I was interviewing, you talk to guests and, hey, what's going on? How you feel? But then what you're trying to do is introduce them to each other so they talk, so you can go make daiquiris. So I found that it was a great education, 8 years of bartending, for doing man on the street interviews, where you go out and just, say, hey, come here, talk to me. Is anyone in your family divorced? And whatever. Bartending was extremely helpful.
And I would imagine in a field like that, it would give you massive confidence, because you're getting a lot of what's it called, flying hours, in a show like that as well? Did it help you with confidence? Because you're live, there's so much things happening. And I would assume that if you make a mistake or you don't say the right thing, you just move on because you have to. Did you feel that at the time?
Well, I remember really being aware that having that microphone on the street or in the studio made me feel extremely confident because I had a job to do. I was supposed to be there. Nobody could say you don't deserve this because my name was on the show. And any social anxiety I ever had, I didn't have when I had that mic, because it was my job to get them to talk and to find out about these people. And I do genuinely feel that everyone has some interesting story, some drama or terror or romance, or we're fascinating creatures. And part of that is because we fail and because we're fragile and we make mistakes. But I loved interviewing people on the street and in the studio because it made me feel empowered. And it was working through that feeling that I wish I could feel this way all the time, but I have to be here and I have to have this microphone so that this person can talk and this person can talk and people can be on TV and they're here with their families and they're excited to be in an audience. And that was the most empowering feeling, certainly more so than acting, because you are behaving as a conduit for other people to tell their story or be seen or be heard. If you're holding the microphone, your job, you're important and you should be there because you're getting their story. And there still is nothing that feels the way that feels.
Would you do something like that in the future?
I don't know how, because I don't have the patience or ambition to. You must do so much. You would think I want to do a podcast, but I don't want to hear me talk. I don't think anybody, I can't talk for an hour and a half. That's why you have guests. Like, how do you feel? I mean, you have a microphone, you have a podcast. It sounds like it's got to be so much work and promotion and attention and editing and sound. And like, it sounds like a lot of work to me. And I did save most of that Criminal Minds money. So I can't get it up to do a podcast. I don't mean to sound crass. It just sounds like a lot of work. And I'm really impressed by people who can do it, because I just don't think I could do it.
I think you could. And I'll just plant the seed with, yes, there is work in all of that aspect, that just in case, so people are aware, but that's in terms of like the mental energy, the fun is this. And also it changes. I don't think that I can necessarily speak for that long as well, but that's why I'm the interviewer as well. Yes, I've got stuff to say and stories to tell, but it sounds like you're also able to bring out the best in your guests and weave it and do certain things. And, you know, you can always edit as well. So I'm planted the seed, maybe something to consider. I think you would thrive in it. I just wanted to just say, oh yeah. So you mentioned how you dropped out and you're in a band. What was the goal? Was acting the goal?
Yeah. And this is very funny to me that, so I was a singer in a band. I was in a couple of bands, and what I thought from 18 to 24, when I was in bands, 25, was I'm going to be like Cher or Sting. And I'm going to be in this huge band. And then I get to pick whatever movie I want to be in. And everyone will think I'm cool. And I'll have one name. I'll just be Paget. And I think it actually came from, I was really terrified to even try acting. And I was afraid because I thought, I always wanted to do this. I was always in school plays and the town play. And I always wanted to act. But I didn't have the courage to try because I was afraid, what if I try and I fail and I don't have this option? And so I considered it this little ace in my sleeve. And I'm now realizing in talking to you, it's possible that I did know that manager in San Francisco, only managed correspondents and hosts because he never said anything about representing actors, but I went after him to have him send me on auditions, and it was for talk show, and I got a talk show, and then I got an agent who was kind enough to say, okay, you can pursue acting. You're at this big agency, I'll have other agents send you, because he handled hosts and on-camera people. That's why you signed me. Then I moved to LA and said, I want to act. I'm in acting school, and I've been in acting school in San Francisco, and he sent me on auditions, but I was really scared to try. Listen, I'm glad I didn't. In hindsight, the best way to see everything, I am glad I wasn't acting or trying to professionally act at 16 or 18 or 20 or 22. I think I didn't have the fortitude and self-protectiveness to handle it until I was 25, 26, when I moved to Los Angeles and got that agent. I couldn't have handled it, I don't think.
It is kind of a crazy narrative, and everyone I've spoken to, no one's like been the child star, or very few have it. And, you know, the expectation is that you're 18 and you get in. But through my perspective, and my perspective is just for me, and it sounds similar to you, that we don't necessarily have the tools in our box at that age as well. And if we could do it at 40, and we've had people on this podcast at 30, 40, and even if we had a 50-year-old, for example, and there's no...
Wow.
Yeah, it's just when it works for you, but that narrative that when you're 18 or 19, that's when you need to do it, not necessarily going to work for the vast majority of people as well.
Yeah. I also feel really bad for people who, you know, you hear these stories about child actors, but what if you peaked? What if you were at the top of your profession when you were 8 or 14 or 18? You know, what is that like? That's just crushing. I think it's very hard for, I think it's a difficult thing, because if you were a child star, the way the world deals with a celebrity is different from the way the world deals with regular people, non-celebrities. Yep. And if you were a child and people behaved differently towards you, that changes your perception of your sense of self and the world. So yeah. How do you grow? You can't grow normally after that. I'm really thankful that I didn't even try to. I was just in bands that didn't go anywhere. Bartending was great. And I did a talk show that didn't get sold, but it was awesome. And then moved to LA. Like I feel incredibly thankful and fortunate for everything that's happened, and the things that did hurt or did feel like failing, because there is no, that's I guess what I'm trying to say. And I'm not being very articulate.
No, I think you
Success without failure is that means failure's coming. If you have success without any failure is right around the corner, unless you die, because there is no way to be on top and stay on top. It's not possible.
Agreed. Okay, I got 2 points that I still think this is just amazing of how that it sounds like you're just kind of with the flow. I know that there was a bit of fear, and you talked about the ace in your sleeve, and I know like with the band, and I actually heard you somewhere else say, I'm just rambling, so we'll get to the point eventually, that you had actually recorded an album or a single, and I believe you didn't actually give it to anyone, and I guess that also goes hand in hand with the and that actually, can you speak to that? Was that a similar feeling?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, what do I want to say? What was it? Let's see. 1988 to 1993, I was in a band called Mechanical Bride in New York. Dave was our bass player. Krista was our drummer. Wayne and Peter were our guitar players. We played at CBGB's a lot. We recorded demos a lot. We took all of our money to pay for a rehearsal space, and but we would record our demos at CB's or Don Fury, or we're recording at great studios. This is what we're putting all of our money towards. And by the time we finished paying for it and making 100 copies and and photocopying the artwork and all of us folding it into the little cassette boxes. We would say, you know, man, our new stuff is so much better. So we never sent our tapes anywhere for years. We put out one single with sympathy for the record industry or something, or we put out a 45. There's one song on one side and one song on the other side, and a few years ago they did sell out though, because I think I tweeted about it and they sold all of them. It's just a 45, which is like, no one has record players anymore. So I'm sure people probably just nailed it into the wall at home. Our artwork was great. Christo Douglas, the drummer, who is the furniture designer now, his collages were probably the best part of the whole band.
Would it be
so digitalized? His artwork is beautiful.
Can I listen to it digitally? Like, has someone put on YouTube or something?
Oh, it's got to be somewhere. I don't know, maybe. I haven't looked it up. Mechanical Bride. And there was a California Mechanical Bride, female solo recording artist. And we reached out to her before we put out our single in 1991, saying, oh, we're Mechanical Bride in New York, but you have the name Mechanical Bride, because I think she had registered it with BMI first or something. And she was like, hey, no problem, man. You guys are a bunch of people in New York in a band. I'm in California. I'm a solo artist. Just take it. And that was great. That was just so exciting. Like she was so nice. I don't know who she is or where she is or anything, but whoever that chick is, I love her.
Yeah,
so that was it. One single, 145.
Well,
that's all that ever came out.
And I know I'm kind of jumping the gun because I also think this is kind of like crazy as well. Actually, sorry, at that time, did you know that there was perhaps a fear aspect of not putting it out there? What were you thinking at the time?
That is a really good question, and I also hate you. Hold on.
I get that
because
a lot.
Because of course now that you asked that question, you jerk. I guess all 5 of us were scared of rejection that we never even sent it out. And when we did, we got 2 songs pressed into vinyl. So, you know, when we finally worked up the courage to send out one of those demos, we did. Technically, we have a little tiny record.
You did it. That's cool.
Yeah. So we must have been. We must have been afraid of being rejected, because you have to jump into the abyss, don't you? You have to have the courage to get, even if our new stuff was better, which, let's be honest, it probably wasn't. It probably wasn't any better. You made the demo tape. We spent all that time and money, and you know, we didn't make a lot of money. We should have been aggressive, and we got out and wheat pasted. We could have had people come to our gigs. You know, we were working really hard. But we just didn't get it together to put out those demos. And it must have been. But all 5 of us, that's the funny thing. There was not one person in that band that said, you guys are idiots. We got to send this out. We just never sent it. So we must have all had that same fear.
That's very interesting, but it's nice to see how it's kind of all, like I just wrote in my dot points that you went from a band to an you got the agent manager and then you got you're a host of a talk show. You moved to LA and you somehow just get friends and you're on for like 5 or 6 episodes. Then there's 5, I think I have 5 failed pilots, and then.
Oh no, I was called a pilot killer. No, I was called a show killer. John Cryer and I both were called show killers. Well, because I think that when I stopped counting, I had shot 23 pilots. Maybe 7, 8, 9 had gone on the air. 4 were canceled immediately. So John, including one that was myself and John Cryer. So we were called show killers, because the pilots that we did shoot that got picked up would get canceled after 2 or 3 episodes.
They actually said that to you. That's
whoa. Show killer. Yeah, show killer. But that's okay.
Yeah, okay, I like your perspective, but that's a pretty like in your face. Like, what are you thinking at the time when someone calls you a show killer, which you're not? Like, those shows
No,
may have not gone to end, but it's not your fault.
people kept, people continued to hire me, and
Yeah,
obviously people continued to hire John. So we got the last laugh. We've both been fired. We've both been called show killers, and we're both doing fine.
great. That is great to hear. But still, when someone says you're a show killer, mentally that can be rough to say the least. Or you just didn't care, or you're just like, whatever, I'll just do the next one. What's going on with someone?
I kept getting pilots. I kept getting pilots. So I really don't, I remember laughing about it with Cryer, but I don't remember feeling afraid or panicked, or because people kept hiring me. Also, I don't think anyone in the industry believes in that. Like, I mean, if you were a film director and all of your movies tanked, then I would understand getting worried. But I've just been a hired actor. You can't say I'm tainted or haunted, and like I've single-handedly brought down a show. Yeah.
But even like on the directing side, like, yeah, it's like all your movies, you know this better than me, so once again, correct me if I'm wrong. You know, sometimes there's marketing, sometimes there's other costs that's outside of the director. And yeah, look, maybe if it happens 10 times, that might be on the director, but there's still so many other factors that contribute to it as well.
You're right. And shame on me for saying director.
No.
Because I think, no. I guess when I think of a director, I think of someone who's taking way more risk than I am. Yeah. They are responsible for this film. And I believe money drives the business, right? Yes. Decisions are made based primarily on money, not necessarily talent or longevity or kindness or team players. And so that's why I think directors can be, if they're not making a profit, they can be discarded by studios or agents or actors or writers. I don't know, but a director has more on the line than I do. So I feel Variety calling me a show killer when I was 28. Like, it's just, they called a bunch of people show killers. But that's a lot less responsibility than someone saying this person should never be given financing for a film, because they've put themselves way out there. I have never had an interest in directing, in part because of that. It's just too much work. It's too many people asking too many questions, needing too many answers all day. It sounds awful to me.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a good way. We're going to do a quick rapid fire segment to wrap up the podcast. And okay. I think this is actually a great first question. What has been your special ingredient to work all these years?
Is this a one-word answer? And I'm not being rapid fire enough.
It can be an essay, whatever springs to mind. There's no rules.
Why I've kept working all this time? Be early. Know your lines. I don't know.
There's more to it. Like, your mentality is of growth.
Okay, I guess. Well, here's what I will say. It was a very, very strong work ethic from my mom and dad when my brother and I were young, that if you don't like the job you're doing, stop, quit, apologize. Someone else wants that job. So when you're doing a job, no matter what it is, you do it to the best of your ability and learn something and try really hard. And if you don't know how to do it, ask for help. Like so I take jobs that I want, that are a little scary, that I want to learn from, that I believe I can do a good job at. And I think, really over accepting and working as hard as you can and doing your research and your homework and caring and I want the people I'm working with to be happy to be working with me, and I don't want to shirk my responsibility, and I don't want to treat people poorly, and so I work really hard, even if I may not have a natural gift. I may not be that great. I maybe didn't go to acting school for long enough, but I work really hard, and I want to do a good job, and I want everyone to be happy, and for everyone to do a good job. So I think I continue to get hired, even if I'm not the best or the hottest or the oldest or youngest, or I get hired because I think I have a good work ethic, and I try really hard.
That is epic, and that applies to all fields as well. I'm not going to comment on all
for
of them.
me.
Yeah.
Bartending, waitressing, working at a frame store, temping. I wanted to do my job to the best of my ability, because that's how you take pride in yourself as well. It's not,
Yes.
I wish people wouldn't work in jobs that they hated. I have worked jobs that I hated, and I've tried to find something I love about it, because that is so destructive. If you hate what you're doing, it's very taxing and upsetting, and you got to find something that you love about it, or something you're learning, or something you're getting out of it, because that's very difficult. It's very difficult to I don't always get jobs that are, hey, this is a great experience. Sometimes people are jerks, or something's not so good, but you got to do your job to the best of your ability, regardless of what is going on around you. Do your job to the best of your ability.
Okay, I love that. I'm not going to comment on that, but that applies to all areas of life. And thank you for bringing that up. We'll do a few more. What are you most proud of?
Well, this interview is making me feel pretty happy and kind of proud of the journey I've been on, and I feel good.
That's the goal.
And I feel good. I feel good that I work hard, and that I am trying to be someone people want to work with, and I want to help the whole project be better, and I want to face things that I'm afraid of, and I will fail, and I will have road rage. I don't give anyone the finger, but I'm sure I'll yell in my car, but I'm trying, and I do feel proud of that. I feel good that I am trying to learn and do my best.
Okay, I know I say I wouldn't comment, but that's, as I said at the start, that's what we've got, and I'm great. But that's great. I'm great as well. That's great. You've answered a lot of these. What brings the best creative content out of you?
That's a good question. What brings the best? Well, I like receiving direction from directors, from writers, from if an actor around me has an idea on how to do something well. I like that. It feels good to succeed at something when you're trying to find it, and getting help can help, because I know I don't know all the answers. I like to enter a show with confidence in what I'm doing, but I like being able to ask for help. I guess if I were in a situation where I couldn't ask for help, that to me would be very scary and curtailing. And I would just have to sort of autonomously do the best job I think I can do, but not being able to say, hey, does this work? Do you want to try it this way? I would really not like that. And I in the past 2 years during the pandemic, I have mostly done animation, and that's extremely rewarding, because that is a group of people, and you can play an animated character and say, oh, would she be more angry right now? And you can do different takes on it, and it gives them more to edit from and work with. And I think if I went into a situation where nobody was talking to each other or supporting each other, I would quit. I would want to quit. I would figure out a way to quit.
What keeps you motivated to be the best that you can be?
Fear keeps me motivated.
It's powerful.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I don't want to get lazy, and I don't want to think I'm great. And I'm afraid of that. I'm not afraid of other people. I'm afraid of becoming a jerk. I never want to think I'm great at this or I know all the answers. I don't want to have no fear. I don't want to get apathetic. I don't want to, sometimes you see interviews with actors and they seem like they hate what they do. I don't want to be that person. So I have a healthy fear of taking it for granted. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person.
I'm just thinking as well, given like what you've achieved in your life and also you just being a great person as well, you would have so many people blow steam up your ass as well and say, you are the best, you're the greatest. And, if you hear that enough or even just a few times, that can still be a bit like all consuming as well. And that can also be a bit like scary in the sense, because that can lure, it does, and this better than me, that can lure people into a false sense of like ego or, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I mean, I don't want to make a sweeping statement, but I think a lot of people who get into the profession of acting are insecure somewhere. So it's probably good to hold on to some of that insecurity. So because people who listen to compliments all the time and think they're the greatest, that person doesn't think they're the greatest. I think that's probably clinical narcissism, right? It's that person's not, I don't think anyone really thinks like, yeah, oh, hell yeah, I'm Paget Brewster. I just don't think like.
You can have like moments of that in the sense, like when you do a great job, for example, and but I know what you mean.
You slam the football down backstage?
No, you don't just walk around with your chest out and like, I am the real deal. But still, like, you've got your trailers and people like say you're invited to go to set or just things like that. Or
I hate that. I really wish. I'll tell you what. Ben Weiss, I think his name is Ben Weiss. He was the first AD on Friends. I did 6 episodes of Friends, and they were the most famous. When I was on Friends, they were huge. That show was huge. They were so famous and so young, and they're just beautiful and funny. And that guy yelled at them, and it was awesome. There was no, you're invited to set. He ruled them with an iron fist, and that show worked. Like, that show got done. That sitcom has more scenes per episode than other shows, except maybe How I Met Your Mother, How I Met Your Father. Friends was dense. And Ben, the first AD, gray hair, friend of Clooney's, like he's one of those motorcycle friends of George Clooney's. He would swear at them, don't you effing what? You are not going to your room right now. Get back here. We're doing scene D. And they did it. And it was so cool. And that was a really fun set. And those guys really were like really fun and welcoming and friends and friendly. But I miss that. I wish I could work on a set where the AD was, I end up yelling at everybody. Like, shut the F up. I don't care what you did this weekend. Let's rehearse this. I end up being the Ben Weiss of shows that I'm on because I want to like, hey, let's get it moving. This isn't ha-ha time. None of us need to be hugging. The camera crew wants to go home. Like, let's get this show on the road. And I loved that guy because he was wrangling the most famous, beautiful, successful young actors in the world at the time.
That is so cool.
And like, oh, I loved him.
That is very cool. And yeah, and that he didn't also see them as someone above him as well.
No, he just wanted to get it done.
Oh, last 2 questions.
Okay.
Is there any advice that you'd like to give people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Yeah, it's it's very hard to face your fears and jump towards something, but it's a whole lot better than regretting that you never tried. What if I kept singing in bands thinking my big day, I'm going to be Cher? What if I never tried to do the public access? Not trying, I think, is far more dire than risking failure or being laughed at or being told, this isn't for you. I learned that in improv classes and, failing at jobs, auditioning for jobs I did. That just what else are you going to do? Really, are we going to be reincarnated? Like, you just do it. It's very hard, but it feels so good when you do. It's so worth it to try to do something you're afraid of. It's hard, but it's worth it. That's why it's worth it, because it's hard.
Agreed. Last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with the billion things that you're doing. What is the one question I should have asked you? That's a great response.
What? Hold on. What is the one question I should have asked? I think you're a remarkable interviewer. This is fascinating. I've learned a lot about myself. This is going to bother me for days, though. I'm going to think over and over and over all of this stuff and think, when didn't I face my fears? What if I need to pay more attention? That guy thought I was doing everything right. Michael thought I sounded articulate and self-aware.
I know.
There's no way I am. I got to really look at stuff more. What question should you have asked me? You asked so many questions that I answered that I'm going to be thinking about this for days. I don't want any more questions. Don't ask any more questions, because I don't want to think about my responses anymore.
That's the best answer we've had to that. But before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you? I know there's a few things coming out as well.
Okay, prepare to be let down, because I don't tweet that much. @Paget is my Twitter. @Paget is my Instagram. Barely go on that. I did an episode of How I Met Your Father that I think is airing in a few weeks, because I think the show is starting soon. Hilary Duff, lovely bunch of people. Those guys were great. And what else? I do a lot of animation voices, but then they take about a year to animate, so I don't know when anything's coming out.
That long.
That long. It takes like 9 months minimum.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Only South Park is that, like,
24-hour,
38-hour turnaround, because it's clip. I don't know. Do you know? Your intros are legendary. You know everything. I want to hear my intro. That's the only part of this I'll listen to. When it comes out, I'm gonna listen, because you list everyone's every credit.
Yeah, well, you've got a lot.
It's amazing.
We're gonna list some of them because you've got too many, which is a compliment to you. But I actually have that you're on Ryan Murphy's Netflix series Hollywood, and you're in a reoccurring role on Mum, and we've had a few guests on Mum as well.
Because they might not have aired in Australia yet.
Potentially.
I don't know. I don't know your schedule.
Nor do I, but even if it hasn't aired, people can still check them out as well.
Oh, good. Yeah. Bird Girl is, you might have Bird Girl. I am Bird Girl on Bird Girl.
That's very
And we're
cool.
still recording those. We just started the second season recording them. So again, it'll take some time before you get those, but there are new ones coming. I do a podcast with my friend Arden Marine called Will You Accept This Rose? That's all about The Bachelor, the Bachelor franchise. So it's Bachelor, Bachelorette, and then the reason we watch it, Bachelor in Paradise. That is a good show. I can't think of anything else. What else am I doing? Michael, what am I doing? What's coming up for me? Where can you reach me, Michael?
There's a lot of animation work as well, and that's a lot. That's a lot already. And it's also been talked about at the start of the podcast as well. But credit to you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You are amazing. You're uplifting. You're empowering. I've taken a lot out of this, and I'm going to re-listen to it as well. And yeah, I just think you're awesome, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I cannot thank you enough. And I knew that this was going to be really interesting. You're so supportive and thoughtful. You're a great interviewer, and you have made me recognize connections that I've made and things that I've chosen or not chosen, and the reasons why now with hindsight. And you make me feel great, and I just really appreciate it. This went even. I knew that this would kind of be like a really interesting therapy session, and I love what you're doing. But this was even better than I thought it would be, and I really appreciate your time so much. And I love what you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I super appreciate it. And yeah.
Wow. How good was that? Paget is all about thriving and moving forward, especially when something bad happens. She's all about self-awareness and improvement of self. I love her take on anger and how it hurts us more than anything in the long run. Her example of carrying anger when she was let go from Criminal Minds was brilliant. She intuitively knew that by holding onto it for any length of time wasn't going to help her grow, and in fact prevented her from living a better life. Paget encourages us to work at self-awareness, to recognize what is no longer serving us. Often this isn't an easy or a quick fix, but by merely acknowledging our emotions, we set ourselves free, which allows us to propel ourselves forward. Paget is living proof of how one can reap the rewards of this. So I'll leave you with this gem of a quote by Mark Epstein. Anger is a sign that something needs to change. If you like this episode, share it around, tell your mates. It really helps grow the podcast and spread the positivity and love. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.